And we begin with breaking news on the war with Iran. President Trump and Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is completely open now that Israel and Lebanon have a ceasefire in place. President Trump made that announcement on his Truth Social platform shortly after Iran's foreign minister confirmed the opening. But in his post, the president called the critical fuel passageway the Strait of Iran. This right now is a live look at marinetraffic.com, and it shows vessels moving through the strait right now. We'll keep an eye on it to see if that activity continues to increase. But I want to bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi, who's in Washington for us today. Olivia, so what happens next, and what does this all mean for the U.S. naval blockade?
Well, Mugo, it's been a flurry of activity in the last 2 hours. The president, after the Iranian foreign minister said that they are reopening the strait due to that ceasefire in Lebanon, posted on Truth Social saying the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran, only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. But then he added that the process should go very quickly and that most of the points that they wanted negotiated are negotiated. So the president celebrating a little bit, but saying that that blockade is going to remain in place for ships that are leaving Iranian ports. We have not gotten a response from the Iranians yet, but certainly that is something that is going to bother them in this negotiating process because that is giving them severe economic restrictions. The president also continued to go on a whole tirade on Truth Social. You can tell that he is very happy and pleased about what's going on because he said that Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all sea mines. He just posted that on Truth Social because if you'll remember, that's been a concern as well in the Strait of Hormuz, not only Iranian control, but that they have perhaps laid these sea mines that could be devastating to ships that are trying to pass through the strait. However, now the president says that with the help of the U.S., our adversary in this war, they have been removing these sea mines. So a lot of rhetoric coming from the president this morning, a lot of fast-moving developments specifically on this topic. And so we are tracking it all, but Mugo, the president says that the strait is open. However, the blockade remains. And as you just mentioned on that marine traffic mover, it does appear there are some ships starting to move through there. And as a result, the price of oil has tanked today down in the 80s per barrel. So very notable there.
Yeah. And Olivia, what else is the president saying about ongoing communications with Iran? Obviously, the goal is to find an official deal for all of this, but we don't have a date for when the next negotiation is going to happen, right?
No, we don't. The president has given some indication that talks could be happening this weekend, but we don't have a date and we don't have a, hammered down location. We've heard Pakistan potentially, but we don't know who would be going. But as far as the whole point of this negotiation, there were two things that this White House wanted as it pertains to the negotiations with Iran. One was reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and the other was obtaining that nuclear dust, as the president calls it, which is the highly enriched uranium that is inside of Iran that is near bomb grade, but is buried hundreds of feet underground that remains in country. The president has repeatedly said that the U.S. wants that nuclear dust, that would be really the whole ball game for these negotiations because that's part of the reason why the U.S. went into this war. He yesterday said that Iran has agreed to give it up. Take a listen to what he said here on his way to Las Vegas yesterday.
So very important is that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that. Iran's agreed to that, and they've agreed to it very powerfully. They've agreed to give us back the nuclear dust that's way underground because of the attack we made with the B-2 bombers. So we have a lot of agreement with Iran, and I think something's going to happen very positive.
Now, also on Truth Social just a little bit ago, the president said that he says the U.S. will get all nuclear dust created by our B-2 bombers. No money will exchange hands in any shape, way, or form. That part is key because there was some reporting out this morning that the U.S. would be willing to lift sanctions on about $20 billion worth of Iranian assets that are frozen in the region in exchange for that money. The president discounting that now, saying that's not going to happen, and instead they're just going to give up this nuclear enriched material that they have. Still a lot of questions here as to why Iran is removing those sea mines, and if they're helping the U.S., how they're going to get this nuclear dust, and why they're willing now to totally give up the nuclear dust. Of course, they're in an economically precarious situation, but this is a very fast-moving negotiation. We are expecting perhaps some talks in the near future, potentially before that ceasefire is set to expire next Tuesday, but this is all moving very, very quickly, Mugo.
Yeah, and you're right, Olivia. A lot of questions still left unanswered as of right now. The president was in Las Vegas last night, focusing on the impact of the war on the economy. What was his messaging to people out there?
Yeah, I mean, the president did say the war is going swimmingly. That's the word he used, swimmingly. And he projected that this will be over soon. This whole trip out west is really to tamp down any concern that this is going to be a long-term impact to the U.S. economy. And even today, as we've seen oil drop and the stock market rise, the president is really celebrating that. But still, Americans are feeling the squeeze, particularly at the pump. There are high gas prices, and there's concern that this week was supposed to be tax week. This White House was supposed to be focused on their tax policies that were going to give more money back into the hands of Americans. But some studies have showed that a lot of the refunds that Americans are going to get are essentially negated by the high gas prices. So the president continuing that tour of the American Southwest today, he's headed to Arizona, where he's going to have another conversation about the economy, trying to get voters excited for the midterms, trying to talk about lowering prices, tax refunds, all of which was part of his campaign, all of which was the reason why he won those states. But still, voters in those areas are very much concerned, particularly about their pocketbooks.
We'll see what comes next. Olivia Rinaldi in Washington for us. Thank you so much.